Good morning. It is 10:26. So I was being prophetic last night when I said I would start my live at 10-ish. So this is actually my third attempt at this. And it's just been crazy. So I'm going to see if it worked this time and see. Let's see. I'm going to try this. And I'm going to see if I can share it on my other page. And if you're out there, hey, all right, Anthony Golden. Okay, Anthony, or anybody else that's on. Um, I need to know how my sound quality is because Doug, somebody, I need some feedback. I need to know how my sound quality is because I'm using this really kind of crappy computer that I got from my job because my other devices are not working. Uh, and when I was doing the Zoom thing with Daryl the other night on this, it kept like cutting in and out. So I just need to know if you all can hear me and how it sounds. See you, hear you. Okay, cool. Um, if it starts getting bad again, let me know. My phone, I figured out, if you notice the last couple of live videos that I've done, my phone was, the volume was really bad. And even with the earbuds plugged in, the volume was bad. There was nothing I could do to get the volume higher. And then the other night, my kids are running around and acting wild and crazy. And Josiah says, "Dad, play some music." And so I turn on the music on my phone. I always use like earbuds and stuff. And there's nothing coming out of my speakers. And so then I realized that I probably have damaged that part of my phone where the microphone is and that kind of stuff. And maybe that's why the volume's bad. But give me a second to share this on my other page. And then, like I said, I just never know how this one is going to, this computer, how it's going to sound either. So just one second and we'll jump in. Appreciate your patience. Sorry, I'm running late. And okay, I think I did that right. Okay. All right, Aaron, why do you have two pages? Aaron doesn't know. It's bad enough that Aaron has two pages, actually three pages. I have a page that's just for people that I actually know, like I know you, like we've had dialogue. You're my friend. I know you're a real person, and I can trust you. And that's where I post all my pictures of my family and personal stuff. So I have that page. Then I have this page that I was using for all my religious rants. And I was doing that therapeutically, by the way. People think I do that from a place of, well, I probably do it from a place of, it's not holy in the old, in the old paradigm. Anyway, yeah, Amanda, I know. I was explaining that earlier about the sound. So hopefully this maintains and doesn't cut in and out because sometimes this computer cuts in and out. But I'm going to put out a plea real quick, and then I'll get back to talking about my three pages. If somebody is like a works with Mac a lot and does a lot of live stuff with Mac, if you could reach out to me and just like help me troubleshoot a couple things, that'd be awesome. Okay. So and then, but then I didn't like the energy on my page. Um, and I just decided to break with this page and start a new page so I could use it for different purposes. And then Daryl Carlson comes along and says, "Hey, we need to set up a professional page for you." So I've got pages coming out of my ears. But anyway, I'm a spiritual guy, right? I'm a prophet. We're going to talk about prophets today, and we're just kind of weird people, and we don't do even though I'm a Virgo, when it comes to technology, and it isn't like it isn't Mercury retrograde either, because I think Mercury's out of retrograde, and I just need to let you all know that for some reason, maybe Beth Urban can explain this to me. My Mercury for me is always retrograde, always retrograde. So, so how's everybody doing? Like I said, it's been kind of a crazy morning. Um, I always have like this morning congestion. Um, So I want to talk Goodness gracious, excuse me. I'm talking about prophecy and prophets. Now, this may not be relevant. Goodness, this may not be relevant to everybody, because not everybody comes from like the charismatic prophetic movement. But I will say this: the charismatic prophetic movement has taken over, at least in America, Christianity and evangelicalism. All the big voices: Paula White, even Joel Osteen comes out of that stream that eventually led into the prophetic stream. But then you have these other guys: Bill Johnson, the Bethel movement, Bethel worship. You've got Chris Valentin, who works there with Bill Johnson. You got connected with them a guy named Lance Wallnau. You got a guy that people don't even hardly listen to anymore, Rick Joyner. So you have all of these people who are influencing our nation, that have platforms, and so I want to talk a little bit about what New Testament prophecy is, what maybe genuine prophecy is, what's happening with that particular camp right now, how I think it relates to deconstruction, how I think it relates to the changing of the age, and where I think we can find a prophetic spirit for ourselves. And I'll define all those terms. You have to forgive me if I'm not real sharp and focused on what I'm talking about right now, because I've been messing with technology and getting frustrated for the last half hour. So those of you that come from that movement, you understand that. Those of you that come from like the Southern Baptist Church or the Methodist Church, or whatever you're coming out of, certainly if you're not coming out of Christianity, if you're watching this on the religious trauma page and you're coming from a different religious experience that was toxic or not good for you, then you may not be able to relate to this. But I promise I'll try to bring some content that will be helpful for you. So here's my issue. 2016. I'm going to go back to 2016. And oh, by the way, this is not a political video or message. Some of you have come back to me. Some of you left me because I was talking too much about politics, and I understand that perspective. And normally I stay completely out of politics. But there's just such a convolution of church and state right now. And I spoke out of my frustration. I spoke out of my stress. I spoke out of my passion for certain things that go contrary to my former very conservative values. And that just caused, a lot of turmoil, and people, you bring down my vibration and all that. And I totally get that. Totally get that. Totally get that. So just to say, those of you that know me know, I don't usually stare into those topics much. It's not really a passion of mine. So those of you that have come back to me, thank you. So I'm going to be addressing the presidential election, but not from a political perspective, but from the perspective of the prophets got it wrong. The prophets got it wrong. So back in 2016, for whatever reason that I still to this day cannot figure out, the evangelical church fell in love, and I mean literally fell in love with the candidate Donald Trump. And the reason I say I can't figure it out is because he was kind of the antithesis of the family values group. Like, they were always the family values group. I mean, they excoriated Bill Clinton for his extramarital affairs, and various people down through their political history. And I'm talking about the religious right, not talking about the Republican Party. I'm talking about the religious right. And for whatever reason, they jumped on the Trump train, the Trump bandwagon, when he was the antithesis of everything they valued. And they started saying he was God's chosen, he was God's anointed, they had this Cyrus prophecy that Lance Wallnau put out there and stuff. And in 2016, now I was tapped into this. So just to give you guys some history, I was recognized as a prophet, whatever that means, in the circles that I traveled. I did have some really pretty amazing, accurate prophetic words. The most notable one, and this ran contrary to the evangelical church at the time too, was in 2008 when the the primary elections were just starting, and I had a vision, and in the vision I saw the stock market crash, of 2008. I saw the exact week in which it was going to happen. And then I saw that sort of propelling Barack Obama into the presidency. And I didn't, I mean, I saw the events, I interpreted it not correctly. I interpreted it out of my very conservative paradigm as being something that was bad. But every other prophet out there was prophesying that John McCain was going to get into office because he had picked Sarah Palin, and Sarah Palin spoke in tongues. I mean, this is how ridiculous it is. They liked Sarah Palin because she spoke in tongues. So they decided that God was going to put John McCain in office and he would die in office, and God was raising up, what's her name from Alaska? Sarah Palin, and she was going to be the next president. And I came along and said, nope, better get your money out of the stock market or put it in shelters because everything's going to go bad towards the end of September, the 1st of October, and Barack Obama is going to win the presidency. And Nick Polera, some of you, Jeanette, some of you were there for that, so you can vouch for my accuracy. I'm not embellishing them. I'm not making this up. And so then 26. So I'm just saying I have a track record. That's just one I can think of. I could mention others. Anyway. So 2016 comes along, and I wasn't hearing anything from what the Holy Spirit. I wasn't. My prophetic gift was not. I was not getting anything except what I was getting was that particular election was going to be driven by fear, and disillusionment. In other words, neither candidate was who people thought they were. And this is what I said. You had Hillary, you had Donald Trump. I said, neither candidate is who you think they are. And neither candidate is going to make a lasting impact or difference in terms of policy. Not like you think. Now, every president has policies and makes changes that have lasting impact. But people thought this was going to be a tsunami wave of change one way or the other. If Hillary got in, it was going to be a tsunami wave of socialism. If Donald Trump got in, it was going to be a tsunami wave of revival and whatever. And I was just saying neither one of those scenarios was going to happen. And I didn't know who was going to win the election. So then I just unplugged. I didn't pay attention. Like, I don't pay attention to that stuff until the coronavirus hit. And I had told some people back in December on my job, I said, this virus is going to get here. It's going to be bad. I don't know what that means, but this is going to change the world or change our lives. And again, I don't think it's going to be lasting. I mean, there may be lasting changes like taking your shoes off when you go to the airport and stuff like that. But I don't believe there was this installation, I just don't believe there's this evil empire of people that are standing back there trying to, put in draconian measures to take over your life. I know there are conspiracies. I know there are evil people that want power. I just don't believe that one. So I think things will eventually get back to normal. But when the shutdown hit and the pandemic hit the United States, and everything shut down, I'll be honest, I was in shock. I was in shock. I was reeling. I don't know how you guys were doing. I mean, didn't seem like we knew much about the virus, but I was like, God, I can't believe they just shut everything down. And even back then, because I live in Colorado and we're a little bit more, I don't know, of a blue state, I guess. So we had earlier mask mandates than other places. And so just going into the stores and seeing people wear masks and stuff, it was just surreal. But I remember that first weekend when everything shut down, I was like, what are the prophets saying? Like, what are the prophets saying? I want to know. So I turned on the Lance Wallnows and the Chris Valentins, and there's this guy up in Denver, Lauren Sanford. He's closest to us, and he runs with all those cats. And so I listened to his message, and I listened to some of these others. And I didn't listen to their like last Sunday stuff. I went back because I know these guys. Every year at the end of the year, at this time, and this is why I'm addressing this right now, because the end of December going into the new year, we get a rush on prophecies in the Christian church and in the charismatic church. They used to rhyme. They used to like to rhyme them with the years. And I've been around a while. So I remember when we had more in 94 and we were alive in 95 and I can't remember what 96 was. Things are great in 98, and then I remember when they recycled it. We're coming alive in 2005, more in 2004. Things are great in 2008, whatever. And then the teens hit, right? What do you do with 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19? So you kind of have to quit rhyming after a while. God can't rhyme anymore because you're in the teens. And so God, can't have these poetic, catchy phrase, marketing, prophetic words to give everybody and tell everybody this is what's going to happen. And so, but I know these guys. So I knew, at the end, come 2019, they're going to be giving prophecies for 2020. So I went and listened. Like, did anybody see this coming? Did anybody pick up on this? And I'm going to tell you right now, not a single one of them. This was what they were all saying. This was the chorus line. We're entering into a year of 2020 vision. See, God could get his little pithy phrases back because the year had changed. Now we're not in the teens anymore. We're not stuck. Now God can start speaking a language we can understand. And I'm poking fun at this, but these people think they are hearing from real God, true God, authoritative God, the God that is ruling and reigning in heaven and earth, and they are his mouthpiece, and they are speaking for him, and they are declaring the future, and all that stuff. And so I'm like, well, then you should have seen the pandemic. But no. 2020 vision. Here were the things, standard things. 2020 vision, a year of unprecedented prosperity and abundance. Why was there going to be a year of unprecedented prosperity and abundance? Aaron, I'm glad you asked. The reason for this unprecedented time of prosperity and abundance was because Donald Trump was president and he had beat the Russia rap or whatever, the Russian rap, whatever. Like I said, I didn't pay attention to that stuff, so I don't, it's ancient history. But they were all lathered up about whatever was going on with Russia and the collusion. That's the word I'm looking for. And so he was done with the impeachment. So after being attacked for 3 years, he finally had a year that he was going to be able to be free to do everything he wanted to do. So this is what they're saying. The president is going to be able to pass all the legislation, build the wall, do all the things that he promised. And the stock market's just going to go higher and higher, which it did. And we're moving into a year of unprecedented prosperity and abundance, 2020 vision. And then the next part of it was that Donald Trump would be reelected. That was the words they all used. That Donald Trump would be reelected, that he would win in a landslide, and that we would move into 4 years of abundance and prosperity that are unlike anything that the United States had ever seen before. And then finally, lastly, this is always part of it, then we will see the greatest outpouring of the Holy Spirit that we have ever seen in our lives. And they're all saying this, not a single one of them. Now, Lauren, I keyed into Lauren because he at least saw a storm. He had a dream somewhere before the COVID thing. I don't think it was his New Year's Eve or his, forecast. These guys are out forecasting. And I don't know if it was his forecast for 2020 or if it was at some other point, but he had a dream about a storm coming. And anyway, so then later he was able to tie it in. But he's the only one that saw anything negative or even anything that could remotely be close to what actually was happening. Yeah. Someone I was found close said COVID would begin to be no more during the summer months. Yeah, I heard that too. I saw that too. Yeah, so I'm watching before the election because I knew that Donald Trump was not going to win the election. You can ask my friends. You can ask my friend Doug Martin because he was texting me the night that we're watching the returns come in. He's like, dude, I thought you said Biden was going to win. I said he is. Just sit tight. I just knew. I'm not saying I was prophetic. I just get this intuitive sense about these things. I just knew. And so all these guys, right? All these guys start coming out and they say every prophet said that Donald Trump would win the election. And some of them are still holding out hope. The Electoral College meets tomorrow. The votes have all been certified. If you understand how that stuff works, the Supreme Court weighed in and said, we're not going to listen to your case. It's over. Now, here's the thing. This is, these guys, when they prophesy, are saying, thus saith the Lord, these things are going to happen, that they are hearing by the Spirit of truth. Oh, check this out. So one guy that I kind of follow, and anyway, he said God changed his mind because the Christians got naughty, because the Christians' hearts got wrong, because they got into idolatry. So therefore, God changed his mind midstream. And I fell out of my chair laughing, because rather than own it, rather than say we've been wrong, rather than say we have a problem, maybe we're not hearing the Spirit of truth, rather than that, this guy stood up and said God changed his mind because of the naughty hearts of all the Christians out there. I want you to notice the theme. Like God couldn't see their naughty hearts 4 years ago or 6 years ago, or couldn't see into the future. Your God, who knows everything, couldn't see into the future and see that this was going to happen. And he didn't tell you ahead of time. Like I'm just tired of all the excuses, because it's total bullshit. Because all y'all, and I'm not talking to you guys, but I am calling out the false prophets. I am calling out this group that you judge people, you point your finger at people, you condemn people, you sit on your high horse in your self-righteous delusions, and you cause religious trauma. I'm talking to the leaders, I'm talking to the prophets, you guys were wrong. You were wrong. You were not hearing the Spirit of God. You were not following the Spirit of truth. And if you follow these guys, why do you follow them? Like, I'm hoping people will get a hold of this video that because I'm hoping people will question. I'm hoping people will be disillusioned. Disillusionment is the best thing that can happen to you if you are tied in and plugged into this mess. And it is a mess. You got people that think they're in the Spirit, and they're in the dining room, or they're in the chambers of the heart, of the human heart, or they're in all these different metaphorical things. And I get that God uses metaphors, but for the love of God, can we just stop with the nonsense? Can we just please stop with the nonsense? Like, here's the thing, gang. Here's the thing. Jesus didn't just drive out those who sold in the temple. He didn't just drive out those that were selling religious wares. The Bible very clearly says that he drove out those who bought and sold religious wares, which means those that buy were just as guilty as those that sold. And these people would not have an ounce of influence if people would quit following them. And you can't just blame other people. And you need to be disillusioned, because this whole thing is a scam and an illusion. And to be disillusioned means to lose your illusions. And when you lose your illusions, guess what? Life gets a whole lot better for you. You stop being so disappointed. You stop having so much self-doubt. You stop worrying and having so much anxiety and stress and all that stuff. But as long as you stay tied into that system, and there's an energy to that system that you need to be set free from and you need to be delivered from. So there is no good reason. You guys missed it. All of you missed it. All of you that were prophesying that, you were wrong. Okay, so you missed it. So the prophets missed it. Well, then own it, right? I didn't get it right every single time when I was prophesying over people. There are words I can remember. I remember I prophesied to a couple that their house would sell in a certain time period, and their house never did sell, and they took it off the market. Okay. So what? I mean, I can own that. I have no problem with that. I don't expect 100% accuracy. And I don't lord over people either and say, oh, well, you know, brother, the Lord said, and you need to do this, and God is saying this. And let me tell you something. How many of you saw the video with Paula White? I just want to help you out with this, where she's going, strike and strike and strike and strike. Do you even know what was going on there? Probably not, because you just saw the clip and you laughed at it and you thought it was funny. But she's praying and putting it out, like, knowledgeably, what's called an imprecatory prayer, which is a curse. They're the prayers in Psalms where David is praying for God to smite his human enemies. And she was praying against people. She was not praying against principalities and powers. She was not doing Ephesians 6:12. We don't wrestle with flesh and blood. She was smiting. That is strike and strike and strike and strike and strike. Is any of you that don't agree with the evangelical, prophetic, charismatic, religious bullshit? That's who they're talking about. If you want to practice spiritual practices, she's smiting you. She's putting a death curse on you. Yeah, what I'm saying is, if you want to go pagan, if you want to be into tarot cards, if you want to have, if you practice Islam, if you believe in healthcare for all, like strike and strike and strike and strike. She's talking about you. She's talking about you. And this is the current president's spiritual advisor. This is what Christianity has become. This is what it has devolved into. And they've become so convinced that the other, whether it's the liberal or it's the Black Lives Matter person or it's the Muslims or it's whatever, they've become persuaded. The pagans, if you're pro-choice, the homosexuals, they're talking about you. They're praying for God to kill you and get out of the way so they can establish their form of rule and authority and government that conforms to what they believe, and they believe that the Spirit of God is speaking through them. And so I'm telling you, it's all bullshit, and you have been paraded before the entire world as false prophets because your prophecies for 2020 didn't happen, and your prophecies about Donald Trump didn't happen. Your prophecies about the election didn't happen. Your prophecies for decades about the greatest outpouring that was going to bring revival, the kind of revival you think it's not happening. And so if you're following this stuff, you need to wake up. You need to wake up. And I want to tell you something. You can have spiritual experiences. You can have spiritual power. You can hear from God. You can have closeness and relationship with God without all that bullshit. Oh, Aaron, you're getting into that bad vibration again. You're getting. All right, let's bring this back to the Bible. Can we talk a little bit about the Bible and real prophetic ministry? Because here's what happened. Let me go back to my story. So the day we shut down, listening to this stuff, and I lay there and I pray and I ask God, what is going on? Like, none of these guys saw it. And I had this experience I can't even put words to, I can't even describe. I had this incredible experience, and I got a download. And I saw something about the ministry of the prophet and the ministry of Jeremiah. I talked a little bit about this before. I want to get into it a little bit more today. I saw something about the ministry of Jeremiah. And I realized that Jeremiah was alienated from his peers. And you had Hananiah and some other prophets. Hananiah and some other prophets that were giving words that were contrary to Jeremiah. And specifically, it was about Babylonian captivity. Judah going into Babylonian captivity. The Babylonians were coming down, and Jeremiah is saying, you're going to lose this fight. You're going to lose this battle. What's best for you is to go into captivity. What's best for you is surrender. To surrender and go into captivity. And Jeremiah actually says you'll prosper in captivity. How many of you have ever seen the verse Jeremiah 29:11? For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a hope in the future. It's probably the most quoted verse out there these days. You don't even see John 3:16 that much anymore. I was going to say it's John 3:16, but you see these positive, motivational, inspiring verses more now. And Jeremiah 29:11 tops the list. I know the thoughts I have for you. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. Well, Jeremiah's idea when he's saying that is that they lose their nationalism, their patriotism, and do not put up a fight, surrender to the Babylonians, and go into the city. And God's saying, if you'll do that, I'll go with you, and I will prosper you, and I will bless you. So Jeremiah 29:11 is a verse given to people by a prophet who is going contrary to the prophetic voices of the day, Hananiah being one of them. The other voices were saying, no, God is with us. This is the temple of the Lord. The Lord will protect us. And if we go into battle, he will surely give us the victory. Now, let me frame this for you because this fits so perfectly with where we're at today. So Jeremiah begins his reign, begins his ministry, not his reign, begins his ministry during the reign of King Josiah. And there probably is no king mentioned in the Bible, not even David, who was as influential and important to the history of Christianity as King Josiah. So we know historically that King Josiah lived. We know historically that Jerusalem existed, that it did have a temple. I mean, archaeology bears all that out. And Josiah starts to reign when he's a kid. And you get the idea from the text. If you just cleanse yourself from the idea that this is God's word and absolutely how it happened, you get the idea from the text that Josiah is being manipulated by the priests that are Yahweh's priests. You had competing religions. You had competing, just like today. Like you didn't have ancient Judaism. You had ancient Judaisms. Lots of different practices in their faith, which we'll see in a minute. Lots of different opinions. But you had one group that was trying to centralize and localize power in Jerusalem. And they find a text that had been missing. And scholars tell us that text was the book of Deuteronomy, and they read it to Josiah. They read him this text, and it says, it talks about worshiping on the trees in Deuteronomy. It says, when you go into the land, don't worship Baal, don't worship Jeremiah. I'm sorry, don't worship Jeremiah. I was looking at Doug's comment. I'm not used to seeing these comments. Let me get back focused. Don't worship Baal. Don't worship Asherah. Don't worship on the mountains. You can't just worship anywhere. You can't just connect with God anywhere. You have to come to the temple. You have to come to Jerusalem to connect with God. And all these idols and all this stuff. I mean, it literally is a polemic against what all the other competing religions were doing in the day. So if you could imagine a Christian today getting enough power with a king or an authority in a country, and that authority listening to this person from this religion. Let's just pick on Mormonism. I don't know why, but let's just pick on Mormonism. So let's say the Mormons get influence, and I know they would never do this. Mormons are wonderful people. It's just an illustration. And so unless you practice Mormonism, and unless you practice it the way they practice it, let's say it's a really fringe extreme group. Let's say it's one of those groups that practices polygamy and all that. Unless you practice this religion, then God is going to curse you, and God is going to curse the whole nation if you do these things. And so let's say this leader listens to these Mormons and he says, oh my God, because you see Mormons say they don't drink coffee. They don't drink any mind-altering substance. So caffeine's out. Colas and stuff like that's out. Alcohol's out. And this guy looks around. He says, "My God, look at all the Starbucks. Look at all the Starbucks out there. Look at all the evil Starbucks out there." And he orders martial law, and they go in and they tear down all the Starbucks, and they get rid of all the liquor stores and what have you. That would be something like what's going on in King Josiah's day. And then also they would get rid of all the other churches and all the other buildings and all the other temples except for the Mormon temples. And then they would get the entire nation together to say, we're all going to be Mormons. That's what's happening with Josiah. So the Deuteronomist text reads as a complete polemic against every other spiritual practice that does not conform to theirs. And Josiah buys into it. And so it's a very bloody time in Israel's history, because he goes out and he kills priests. He goes into the temple, and it says he brought out the Asherah, which I'll get to in a minute. He brought out the things that were there for Baal, and he brought out the things that were worshiping the hosts of heaven, and he had them ground to powder. He went and he tore down the altars in the high places. I'll get to that in a little bit too. He tore down the altars in the high places. He brought everybody together. He got the nation to say, he read the book of the Lord to the nation, got the nation to repent of their sins, to turn around. And then, so you had unprecedented national revival. So this is the best time. This is like an evangelical wet dream for America. And yet, and yet the Babylonian captivity happens. And yet Josiah dies in battle. And yet God apparently still brings judgment upon his nation, even though they repented. They did everything Deuteronomy said. See, in Deuteronomy, it says, if you do these things, God's going to punish you as a nation. If you repent of these things, then God's going to bless you as a nation. So they repented of all that stuff, like unprecedented revival. They started following the book of the law like never before, and they still get ransacked by the Babylonians. The temple still gets destroyed, and they still go into Babylonian captivity. Because you see, part of the problem, so here's what I'm getting at. You can see why Hananiah and the other prophets thought God would be with them. And so what they were prophesying to Josiah and to the other kings, I can't remember who came after Josiah, because Josiah didn't go into Babylonian captivity. It was at least one king later. Doug, you're good at this stuff. You might be able to help me out, or somebody else out there, put it in the comments or correct me if I get it wrong. But my point is, it was easy for them to prophesy in a way that, number one, maintained the status quo, and number two, perpetuated their paradigm of the future that they believed, let me say it this way, the future that they wanted to impose upon the public. They had a future that they wanted to impose upon the public. You got it? And so they're prophesying to maintain the status quo and impose the future, which was a prosperous and successful Jerusalem. And Jeremiah is prophesying the exact opposite. He's prophesying against the prevalent paradigm. He's speaking against it, and he's saying, no, this paradigm is not the paradigm of the future. This is not the paradigm of the future. I'm going to say it again. This is not the paradigm of the future. And so if you allow me to be a little bit prophetic, this is what I believe. And so I'm all over the place. So I have this experience where I'm seeing how Jeremiah kind of speaks against the paradigm. And then I have this experience that I can't put into words, but here's what I got from it. That there is prophecy that seeks to impose the past and the present upon the future. Prophecy that seeks to keep the cycles going. prophecy that seeks to strengthen the status quo and bring us back to a time, bring us back to a time, back to what they perceive to be a better time. So all these prophets in the charismatic movement and all these Christian leaders are students of revival, and they think things were better. They read about the Pentecostal outpouring at the beginning of the turn of the century, and they think it was awesome. They read about the healing movement in the 40s with Oral Roberts and tent revivals, and they think it was awesome. They hear about the Welsh revival, or they hear about other types of revivals, and they think they were awesome, and they want to perpetuate that, or they want to go back to the book of Acts type of thing. And so when they're saying the greatest outpouring, they're not really looking for anything new. They're not really looking for anything fresh, and they're not looking for anything different. They're looking for a perpetuation of the old. And that's what Hananiah and the prophets of Jeremiah's day were doing. But there is another type of prophetic ministry or prophetic perception. Let me define prophet. All it means to be a prophet, it's an unfortunate English translation. In the Hebrew, all it means to be a prophet is to be a seer. You're able to see. You're able to see into the realms of the spirit. You're able to see a future. You're able to see a future hoped for. You're able to see things that other people aren't able to see. Another word for it is it bubbles up. Like, it's all about this stuff that comes from within. It's like what Jesus talked about, out of your innermost being will flow rivers of living water. So what we are seeing in the prophetic movement in the charismatic is so false and phony and fake, and they're liars and they're manipulators. I'm talking about the leadership, and I am calling them out. And anybody that gets this video, any one of my former friends, any of you big time guys, whatever, I don't care. If you want to defend this, come on my show, come on my platform, come on my live video, and we will have a talk. And we'll have a discussion, and you can call me out and I'll call you out, but it'll be civil and it'll be profitable and it'll be good. So if you want to do that, get a hold of me. I doubt any of you will. But the ability to see, so here's back to that experience. It's like there has to be a company of people that can see not what was and not what is, but can reach into the future and see something that has not yet been. Something that is good and positive and hopeful, and can speak creatively and influence their life creatively and influence a society creatively into a future that has not yet been. Why do we keep going back over the same old arguments every 4 years? Why do we do these polarized issues? Like my favorite one is socialism versus capitalism. Like, everybody's afraid of socialism. Gang, you already live in a corporate socialism structure. You already do. Your public school is socialist. The guys that work on your road, that's not capitalist. That's not free market. Your army, your military, for crying out loud. Could you imagine a free market militia? At the same time, we don't want the government controlling everything. We want to have free markets. I mean, you guys really believe that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or AOC or Bernie Sanders is going to do a top to bottom socialist program? Like, they're going to get Amazon to give up their stuff and Google to give up their stuff and Facebook to give up their stuff and Wall Street to give up all. It's impossible. It cannot happen. It cannot happen. It's a damn lie when people are saying that. But why can't we get past that? Why can't we get to a better place? Why? And another like liberal conservative disagreement is conservatives are, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, work hard, make it for yourself. Don't depend on anybody. Don't depend on the government. I love that. I think we need that. But at the same time, and then over on the far left, I guess you could say, well, we need to just have equality, and we need to totally, be Robin Hoods and take from the rich and give to the poor and whatever. And why can't we have strong, independent values and freedom to pursue life, liberty, and the happiness, while at the same time having social consciousness and compassion to our brothers and sisters. Why can't we find a third option? See, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. We need people who are innovators. We need people who are innovators in the realm and area of religion, religious thought, and religious thinking. We need to break out of the old paradigms and realize that, yes, something new is emerging, and we need people who can see what's emerging and can speak prophetically to it. And that means going against the paradigm. That means not being popular. That means being called out. That means being isolated and thrown into a well. That means being rejected, particularly if you go against national patriotism and all that stuff. I am not trying to be political here. I'm not. I'm talking about us collectively as a future, and an inclusive future that includes people who don't think like me, who don't worship like me, who don't want to follow the same morality that I want to follow, but I want you to be included. I want to see a better future. Okay. So why wasn't Jeremiah just listened to? Partly because Jeremiah got some prophecies wrong. And I was going to go into this because I know I've got a friend out there that's been asking me. Gary Ellis, if you're listening or watching to this, you've been asking me, and we may have to have this discussion another time because you're like, where in the scriptures? But suffice it to say, Jeremiah predicts in one place that a king's going to be dragged out by a donkey. He's going to die a disgraceful death, dragged out of the city by a donkey. And Kings tells us that he fulfilled his life and had a decent burial like any other king. But one of the biggest ones was he predicted a siege from the Scythians that would come in and wipe out and completely destroy the land. And that siege never happened. And because that siege never happened, that's one of the reasons you see later on that Jeremiah is struggling with his own identity and his own insecurities about being prophetic. And he shut up, actually, I think, for 14 years after that happened. So Jeremiah was not credible towards the future either. So maybe, and I said all this to bring it down to this, maybe the function of prophetic ministry is never meant to be predictive in the sense that our future is fixed. Now, I know there are people out there that understand time and space differently, people out there that believe we're all having our past lives simultaneously. If that makes sense to you, cool. If I'm wrong about this, please forgive me. But what if true prophetic ministry is about connecting with the Spirit, the flow of the Spirit, the well of water that's on the inside of you, the living water that's in the inside of you? But what if it is authentic source, authentic God, authentic Spirit, whatever you want to call it, making connection with the authentic you, and then creating a flow of energy and a pattern of energy from within you to help you to influence the future, to attract into your life that which you want to attract, that which you believe in, that which you desire. And what if the future, because the future, I think, and I'm not trying to be prophetic here, I'm just saying that information is so prevalent and it is being so misused and so mishandled that really, in a very real sense, we already live in alternate realities. What if how can you stand up as a so-called prophet and predict the future for people when we all have different karma? And here's what I mean by that. I'm speaking to the Christian audience here. You love to quote Galatians 6, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap. So you're going to, if that's true, then people are reaping what they sow. Why pray for healing? Why, how can you predict the future? Even for, let's say, 200 people in your church, they're all sowing different seeds. They all have different karmas. How can you generalize and predict the future for all of them? You see what I'm saying? So instead of it being like this, just one timeline, the way I see this happening is there are many streams shooting out from this river and going into many different directions. And at some point, we have to take responsibility for our own stream. You see what I'm saying? But here's the thing, because information is so readily available, because things are hard to fact check, and because the powers that be want to keep us divided and suspicious and want to keep us thinking about the evil other that's out there, whether it's the evil socialist or it's the evil capitalist or the evil conservative or the evil evangelical Christian or the evil witch, or whether it's the people in the Middle East, or whether it is the evil pharmaceutical companies, or maybe it's the evil herbal companies, or maybe it's the quack on this side of the pendulum. It's the quack health practitioners, whatever. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just trying to show you how we get divided. And then for holistic practitioners and herbalists, it's the evil pharmaceutical empires. And they all have their information echo chambers. And it's almost impossible to cross-pollinate or to have discussions because we're so convinced that our way is reality. You see what I'm saying? And so this is going to happen more and more and more, so that we are not separated and divided anymore. See, in the age of Pisces, what separated us primarily was water. Rivers that made boundaries to territories and oceans originally. And then, we marked out states and countries and maps. But we were a people group who identified geographically with an area, because Pisces is a water sign. Aquarius is an air sign. We all breathe the same air. It also has to do with water, which is consciousness. So it's an outpouring of information. It's an outpouring of information. And we're just getting started in the age of Aquarius, and we're already here at this point. So that what will make up our cultures in the future is not going to be your address. So in other words, it's not going to be, I'm an American, you're a Mexican, you're a European, you're a Brit, you're an African, and we have our cultures based on where we live. We are going to be living in alternate informational ecologies, alternate information landscapes. And those are the new borders. And those are the new boundaries. And so just like in the age of Pisces, if someone came in across your boundary, someone invaded your territory and said, we want to live here, you defended yourself and there was wars to protect those boundaries. The Second Amendment gives you the right to have a gun, and really it's to protect you from a government takeover, but now we think it's to protect us from intruders, which is okay. I'm fine with that. So the Second Amendment allows you to have a gun to protect yourself from an intruder, to protect your boundary. Because if somebody just barges into your house, they're violating your geographical boundary. If somebody's just coming across into your country illegally, they're violating your geographical boundary. This will not be so in the age of Aquarius. In the age of Aquarius, our landscapes are mental. Our boundaries, our homes, the space that we occupy, is the information that we hold on to and we hold to dearly, And we are already seeing information ecologies beginning to develop. We saw it with people leaving Facebook for Parler. Why? We see it with people. I'm not going to watch Fox News. I mean, we see it with CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. But for me personally, I think CNN does a pretty decent job. MSNBC, obviously, they're very much to the left. Fox, as far as I'm concerned, is on another planet. They're very much to the right. And you never cross-pollinate. Like, I don't know how many of you, like, I watch all three of those stations to kind of get an idea of what everybody's saying. And it's very obvious to me that this is a information territory over here on the Fox, Rush, Newsmax, OAN stream. And this is a totally different information ecology over here on CNN, MSNBC, and what they call the mainstream media. Like, you get completely different information, and you don't know the other even exists or what they're saying unless you cross-pollinate. But see, we're not doing that because we're creating cultures, we're creating boundaries. So then here's what happens. There can't be real honest dialogue anymore, because it used to be that we could sit across the table and we could dialogue. You see what I just did? If we're sitting across the table dialoguing, I am inviting you into what used to be my space, my home. Now we have social media. I connect with more people on social media than I have in my home. I'm closer to people that I met on social media than I am people that live in my own hometown. Do you see what's happening? So we're developing these cultures and subcultures that are going to have nothing to do necessarily with the color of skin or your address or what nation you belong to. It's going to be what information nation do you belong to? And so if somebody comes in with different information, they sound like a foreigner. They sound like an alien. And therefore, they sound like a threat. And so now we're protecting those borders. And now we're protecting those boundaries. And we're dividing and will divide even further as we move into this future. We're going to divide over that stuff even more. So what I'm saying is that but with that vision and all that information and streams of information that's flowing out, it's possible then that you can connect with various different prophetic streams and experience various different and very different future outcomes depending on which thought current you flow in the most. The scary thing about this, the really scary thing about this, see, everybody thinks Age of Aquarius is going to be great. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think that it has potential. I think it's going to be both. I think like Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, there are times that he prophesies destruction and times that he prophesies restoration and beauty and life and abundance. Like back to back. Which is it going to be? Which is it going to be? Is it going to be destruction or is it going to be plenty? And I think the Age of Aquarius is a dangerous time. If we're in the Kali Yuga, it ain't going to be pleasant at all. We're not. If the Kali Yuga is correct, that's the Hindus. That's the age that the Hindus believe we're in. If they're correct, if we are in the cycle, then this is not the evolving and elevating of consciousness that happens in this age. This is the devolving and the descent of consciousness that happens in this age. That leads into total breakdown and destruction of our societies. And I don't believe we have to be bound by the Kali Yuga, don't get me wrong. But I do think it's so important, I think it's more important than ever, that we are able to disconnect from our own, we're able to unplug from our own information ecosystem. You get it? And be able to do the inner work, be able to connect in our hearts, be able to connect with nature, be able to connect with God, be able to connect with the divine, and really have our own mind, really have our own heart, and really have our own voice. Now, here's the last thing I'm going to say, because I forgot this and I need to say this. This is why I'm begging you, if you've listened to these prophets, here's why you need to get out. Because they are not going to admit that they got it wrong. They're not going to say that they missed it. They're not going to apologize. They're not going to humble themselves and repent. Maybe some of them will. Chris Valentin put an apology out that he had prophesied wrongly about the election, and then he took it off. One can only assume, like after a few hours, one can only assume that his buddies, his accountability, his spiritual fathers, whatever, talked him out of it. But to date, he's the only one I've heard that's given an apology. Maybe some of them will. Most of them are going to gaslight you. Most of them are going to say, like the other person, God changed his mind because of the naughty hearts of the Christians. That's gaslighting. They're going to gaslight you just like an abusive, narcissistic abuser. They're going to gaslight you. If you're in this, I know this isn't my audience, but if this gets out somehow to somebody, they're going to say it's your fault. They're going to say you didn't pray enough. They're going to say you didn't, who knows, man? Too much compromise, too much lukewarmness, or they're going to blame people like me. They're going to find their scapegoat. But there is no scapegoat here, guys. Don't let them scapegoat you. Don't let them scapegoat you by gaslighting you. That's actually what happened. The Bible, actually, the book of Deuteronomy, because here's the thing. After their big revival and after their rejection of Jeremiah, they still go into Babylonian captivity. So they had to figure out what happened. How did we end up in Babylonian captivity? And if you look at the scriptures, this is plain as day. If you look through the scriptures, it was the king. The king was the one that was held responsible. As it went with the king, so it went with the land. But because the kings gave us the Bible, they had to find a different scapegoat. It couldn't be Josiah. Couldn't be these righteous kings. So they take it back to Manasseh. It's what Manasseh did, who preceded Josiah. But ultimately, in the end, when it's a finished product, Deuteronomy 28 makes it clear. It wasn't the kings, and it wasn't the prophets, and it wasn't the teachers, and it wasn't the priesthood. It wasn't the people in control. It was the people who were under the power structures. It was their fault because they didn't live right, because they got into worship, because they built on the high places, because they chose to honor the divine feminine, because they didn't do right, because they didn't follow the law. Therefore, God sent punishment on the land, even though their prophets were telling them that punishment was not going to happen. You see what happened? In Jeremiah's day, the prophets were saying, no, go to war, go to battle. God is going to protect us. And God didn't protect them. The city was destroyed, the temple was destroyed, and they were carried off as slaves in Babylonian captivity. And so they didn't say the prophets missed it. And they didn't blame the kings anymore. They blamed the people. We're in this mess because you guys won't live right. And that's how the Pharisaical system grew up, because they were trying to figure out just exactly how they had to keep the law in order to get God to restore them as a nation, and especially in order to get the glory and the presence of God to come back. So I'm going to pick up with that biblical narrative later on, because I really want to show how this all leads into the New Testament. I got on a rant, guys. I didn't intend to do that. I hope you understand my passion and my heart in this. I'm not trying to be political. I'm really not. I'm just trying to see the, I'm really not. I'm staying true to my course and speaking out against religious abuse and exposing levels of religious manipulation, control, and religious trauma. And once again, I'm going to say it one more time. If you were out there and you were prophesying all this stuff for 2020 and the election, and you got it wrong, you need, and you want to defend that somehow, or you want to show some integrity and come on and have a discussion, I'm game. I have invited people who are part of that system to come and sit down with me and talk. Obviously, with social distancing and stuff, we'd have to do it via Zoom. Let's have a debate. Let's have intense fellowship over some of these topics. And to date, nobody's taken me up on it. So anyway, love you guys. I hope this was okay. I'm going to go back and read the comments this time. I'm finally getting myself back. At least I thought. Maybe I went on too big of a rant. You guys let me know what you think. Because I want to be putting out a peaceful, positive vibe and positive energy that's going to be uplifting for people going forward. I really do. But at the same time, exposing religious BS and helping people heal and get free from that as well. And do some teaching and stuff. So that's my plan going forward. I had to stay off Facebook to kind of recover myself for a while. So if I haven't reached out to you, or I haven't you've messaged me and I haven't returned your messages, I've just been staying away, just regaining my own center of balance and integrity and voice. And so anyway, appreciate and love you guys. Namaste.